refrain from spending about $5 billion, I believe, which had been authorized for expenditure this fiscal year. And somewhere between 300 and 400 million of that was, as you indicated, a reduction in expenditures in the Department of Agriculture. Now, a lot of this simply means deferring expenditures. There are experiment stations that can be built next year as well as this year. There are public buildings that don't have to be built during this period when inflation is a threat. Actually, we have been authorized to carry on our operating loan program this year at the same level as last year. As last year, we had $275 million for operating loans. The Congress did appropriate more than the President asked for operating loans this year. Our budget submission asked for $300 million for operating loans, and the Congress actually authorized $350 million. So it's that additional $50 million plus $25 million, by which the budget exceeded last year's level, that we're being asked to refrain from spending this year. I think that by proper planning, by utilizing other sources of credit wherever we can, by developing what we'd call split lines of credit, in which suppliers finance what they can by not lending money for purchase of new equipment quite as thoughtlessly as we might otherwise. I think we'll be in at least as good a position this year as we were last year.
Well, it seems to me kind of taking it out of one hand and throwing it away with the other, when they're asking farmers on one hand to produce more, to feed the hungry world and so forth, and increase our food for peace, to meet something that has gained the popularity of Congress and the popularity of the nation is this Food for Peace program. And therefore, in order to meet these demands, farmers are being encouraged to go into extra production. Well, to do that, they're going to need additional capital. And it seems ironic that at the same time they would cut back these operating loan funds when they're so direly needed, which instead of making farmers go to the bank and pay 8 or 9% interest.
Well, I'm sympathetic with what you're suggesting here. I'm sure that to increase production is going to require additional inputs. If we're going to farm 30 million more acres of land this year than we did last year, somebody's going to have to finance the additional operating expenses. The reason I say we'll be about as well off as we were last year is because farm income is up, net income is up. Some of these expenses, let me say that generally farmers are in a better position this year than they would have been several years ago to finance some of this expansion from their net earnings, from their farm savings. I hope we get through the year and meet all our goals, and nobody suffers. And I'm sure that if we can't do that, there'll be some relaxation on the part of the administration.
Well, I'm sure most farmers will hope the same. Now, there's also been talk in Washington that efforts will be made by the U.S. Department of Agriculture to change the old parity concept from one of parity prices to parity income. Now, this, I'm sure, will have many family farmers up in arms because it indicates as far as I can see, it indicates a trend towards setting a standard to you either grow big with the times or you go out of farming, and we are concerned with protecting the family farmer in this country, at least our organization is. Do you have any comments on this?
Well, it's a little out of my field. However, I don't think that modernizing the concept of parity mitigates against family farmers any more than other kinds of farmers. Actually, net income is what's important to a farmer. Whether we know that as more cash inputs have to go into farming, herbicides, pesticides, commercial fertilizer, the many new cash introductions, that every time this development takes place, it makes the old parity formula less and less realistic today. Actually, if a man got 100% of parity, that would mean that on the basis of 1910 to 14, I believe it was, those were the base years, it would simply mean that he got the same ratio he got the same ratio of things he bought and things he sold. Whether that ratio was good or not is not significant in the old parity formula. What farmers really understand is the amount of money he has left at the end of the year after paying his operating expenses and meeting his debt servicing and whatnot. So it seems to me there is some merit in keeping our eye trained by whatever device we can upon what happens to net incomes of farm families. And I really can't get very excited about the parity formula, because I don't think it's been very useful for the last 30 years.
Well, getting back to your F.H.A. program, can you tell me these cutbacks in operating loan funds, is this going to make it more difficult for farmers to obtain an operating loan from the F.H.A.?
Yes, it will somewhat. That is, they'll have this will mean some credit rationing. This will mean that some of the things they'd like to borrow money to buy, they won't be able to borrow money from us to buy. I think that we'll be able to meet the essentials. We'll be able to meet those credit needs that will keep people on farms, keep them efficiently in the farming business. I believe that the farmer who is perhaps looking for an opportunity to trade his machinery earlier than essential, he probably won't get any credit from the Farmers Home Administration to do that. We're going to make this $275 million go as far as it'll go, serving essential needs of as many farm families as we can make it serve.
Well, thank you, Mr. Birch, for your comments. And Dave, you got anything else?